We're back here in Lakewood, Parshas Shoftim, Chodesh Elul. People are asking me why we're not doing it this week from Eretz Yisrael again. The answer to that question really is because, unfortunately, Mashiach did not come last week, and we had to make our way back here. So we're back to Southside Sandwich Shop for our weekly share in Nesivos Shalom on the Parsha. And this week we're going to start talking a little bit about Elul, Rosh Hashanah. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Teshuva, Perek Zayin, Gedoyla Teshuva Shemikareves es ha'adam l'shchina. That Teshuva is great. Why? Because it brings a person closer to the Shechina. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Alekecha. When you do Teshuva, it brings you back ad Hashem Alekecha, brings you back to the Shechina. If a person does Teshuva, you become a davuk b'Hashem. That's the Rambam. The Rambam says that, and the Rambam continues. Hatshuva mikareves es harachoykim. Tshuva brings close people that are far. Emesh, yesterday, hoyazeh sonui lifnei hamakam. Yesterday, this person was, quote, so to speak, hated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hayoim, and today, after he did tshuva, hu nechmad korov v'yadid. Yeah? A person does tshuva, he becomes beloved HaKadosh Baruch Hu, korov, close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he becomes a yadid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Emesh, yesterday, the Rambam continues, hoyozeh muvdal me Hashem Alekei Yisrael. He was muvdal, he was separate, totally separate, apart from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hayoim, and today, right after he does tshuva, hu mudbak b'shchina. He's connected to the Shechina. It's a lashon Rambam, Perek Zayin, Hilchos Teshuva. Anybody who's been here by the Nesivos Shalom share for any amount of time knows that we've mentioned many, many times how the entire Torah and the mitzvahs, all Taryag mitzvahs, are 613 ways to the mitzvah uvoy sidba, to become closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are 613 different ways, eitzos, that we give to a person, and you use all these ways to bring you to Avas Hashem and Vekas Hashem. The mitzvah of uvoy sidba, how do you attain the mitzvah of uvoy sidba? By doing the 613 mitzvahs. In other words, it's a constant process, it's a climb. A person, your whole life, and your entire year, from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, is based on doing mitzvahs and becoming Davuk HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, you need all the Torah and mitzvahs to come close, because if it's 613 ways, we need to try to use as many of the 613 as we can. So, Fektin Nesivos Shalom, an unbelievable kasha. How is it that the Rambam tells us over here that when a person does tshuva, the person is called the davuk b'Hashem? How could it be? We always said that it takes 613 mitzvahs and 613 ways to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And how is it that the Rambam tells us over here, sort of like a magical solution? A person does tshuva, and we go through, right away, we express lane, we go through the whole thing, and we say, now you're a davuk b'Hashem. What happened to all the Torah mitzvahs? We always said, in order to have uvoy sidbak, in order to connect HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you need Torah mitzvahs. What happened to all those Torah mitzvahs? And be'emes we find, the Gemara talks about, we find the same type of idea by Shabbos Kodesh. The Gemara says, Masechta Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis, the following. Kol hashomer Shabbos k'hilchasa, anybody who keeps Shabbos k'hilchasa, afilu over avodah zara kedor enosh, even if a person is over avodah zara, like in the dor and generation of Enosh, which was very, very severe avodah zara, moichel him. We're moichel him. Again, the same type of kasha that we asked on the Rambam before. How could it be that if a person just keeps a Shabbos, that they're moichel him, he gets forgiveness even if he did avodah zara? How is that possible? Shmir Shabbos, just Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, gets you a mechila. And you know what? The Gemara there doesn't even say, the Maimer Chazal doesn't even say anything about doing tshuva. All it says is keep Shabbos, do tshuva. And keep Shabbos, you don't have nothing about tshuva. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moichel you. Even if you have oiven avoid zara kedar enosh, you moichel you. Again, another example of a sort of inexplicable express lane. And how you get there without doing much effort. So really, the Nesivos Shalom says that really, when we speak about tshuva, there are different madregas of tshuva. We know, everybody knows, you're familiar with the famous Rambam in Perek Beis in Hilchos Tshuva. The Rambam says there that what is tshuva gemura, what is considered a complete tshuva. Tshuva gemura, complete tshuva is really when you are in the exact same situation as you were when you did the Aveira, and you refrain from doing the Aveira. That's tshuva the gemura that the Rambam says. In other words, you come to the same situation, same place, same type of situation, same type of nisayon, and this time you're not over the Aveira, you refrain from doing the Aveira. That is tshuva gemura. And then there's another type of tshuva. There's another type of tshuva which is not complete. A type of tshuva which is not complete is, let's say a person does tshuva, but you don't have the same nisayon. At every stage of a person's life, you have different nisyonos, different tests. And many times we pass that stage of our life. You're not a young child, you're not a teenager, you're not in your 20s, you're not in your 30s. There are different nisyonos that everybody has in life. And let's say a person does tshuva later on in life when you don't have that nisyon. So that is considered tshuva. Yes, it is tshuva, but it's not the complete tshuva. It's not the ultimate level of tshuva. The Nesivos Shalom says that even in tshuva gemura, even in the highest level of tshuva that we said, there are still different madregas of tshuva within that. There's tshuva meira, tshuva that we do, that somebody does because they're afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then there's the highest level of tshuva me'ava. And by tshuva me'ava, when a person does tshuva out of his love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, unbelievably we say that zedoinos nasin loikis chuyos, which is an unbelievable thing. When a person does tshuva me'ava, his aveiros become like mitzvahs. His aveiros become mitzvahs. Now, let me ask you something. What would anybody here say? How exactly does that work? You know, think about what we just said. The more aveiros a person has, the more zchusim and the more zchuyos he's going to have after he does tshuva me'ava. So it could be that you're better off doing, a person that has more aveiros might be better off, because if he does tshuva me'ava, and we say all his aveiros become zchuyos, so maybe he's better off. Maybe a person, and I see people here saying, hey, I'm in great shape, right? But obviously it can't be that way. And it's not going to be that way. So how do we understand this? How do we understand breaking apart this tshuva? How do we understand the idea of tshuva? So really, we need to say that there are two different chalakim of an aveira and tshuva. What happens when a person does an aveira, chas v'shalom? What happens? First thing that happens is that there's a pagam in the person who does an aveira. A person does an aveira, there's a pagam in the person. And for that, we have a tikkun. For that, we have regular tshuva, and then the Sfarim bring down an unbelievable thing about tshuva, like we have in the Keli, Kibbola Kapoto. For that, we have tshuva. The same way you do an aveira, the tshuva has to be the same way. If you do an aveira with such a hislavas and everything, then the tshuva has to be the same way. But that's the level of tshuva, that a person does tshuva for what it affected the person. And then there's something else totally different. When a person does an aveira, there's another pagam. There's the pagam of chilul Hashem of doing an aveira. Person does an aveira, and people see that a person does an aveira. He's showing that he doesn't care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He flaunts his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, I don't need that. That's a chilul Hashem. Every aveira has chilul Hashem in it. So when a person does tshuva me'ira, the Nesivos Shalom says, when a person does tshuva me'ira, that helps for the pagam in a person, that the person did an aveira, and he has a pagam in himself now. For that, tshuva me'ira helps. But for the chilul Hashem part, you still need a kapara, you still need tshuva. For that, zok the Nesivos Shalom, you need tshuva me'ava. A person has to go out and actively be mekadesh Hashem and show his great love for Hashem And that's the only way you get a kapara for the Chil Hashem part of doing an Aveira. The other part of the Aveira, Tshuva Meira does. But for this, to get a kapara for the Chil Hashem part of doing an Aveira, that you need Tshuva Me'ava. You need the highest level of Tshuva. Ava show, you need the Ava to show in everything you do. When you come and you do things for HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Ava, you're showing, to be Mekadosh Hashem. You're showing other people how much you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That gives you a kapara on the second part of the Aveira, which called a Chil Hashem. And yes, it's taka true. We had a question, how do we say, Zedoinas Nasis like Yishgod, that a person, that a person, his Averas become like mitzvahs. How could that be? We asked the question, okay, so it looks like a person who has more Averas is in better shape, because once he does Tshuva Me'ava, it's all going to turn over to be Zchuyos. Yes, the more Averas that a person has, if you have a person that has a lot of Averas, and people know that he's a person who's over Averas, so when people see that such a person turns his life around, there's even a bigger Kiddush Hashem. And if you make the bigger the Kiddush Hashem, the bigger the kapara is. The more you're being Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, the bigger the kapara you get from Tshuva Me'ava for causing a Chil Hashem by doing an Aveira. And now we could explain the Rambam that we asked at the beginning. The Rambam said, Gedoyle Tshuva Shemikareves Es Ha'adam, that it brings a person closer to what? We said Tshuva is great because it brings a person close to the Shekhinah. We asked, how is that possible? There are so many ways. You have to do so many mitzvahs. We've learned so many times that all 613 mitzvahs are a way to avoid sidbuk, a way to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here all of a sudden we say, the person does tshuva, and he's already close, he's attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rambam is talking about tshuva me'ava. And tshuva me'ava is the highest level of tshuva, and that's right, tshuva me'ava is like an express lane, straight away back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Your Averos become like Zchuyos. You become totally Davuk B'Hashem. So we can now understand the Rambam. When the Rambam says that when we usually say that you need all the mitzvahs to come Uboy Sidbak, they're close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's under normal circumstances. But when a person does Tshuva Me'ava, that brings you right away, close. You're in the easy pass lane, in the express lane, straight back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's very interesting to note that in Hilchas Tshuva from the Rambam, if you take a look, the last parak in Hilchas Tshuva in the Rambam does not say anything about Tshuva. You know that? You look at the last parak in Hilchas Tshuva of the Rambam talks about Avas Hashem. And that brings out our point. We had a few questions on the Rambam. How does he get to that? Tshuva is like magic. It brings you back close. The Rambam brings down the last parak to say that an extremely vital and important part of Tshuva is that the Tshuva has to be Avas Hashem. The highest level of Tshuva is from loving Hashem. That's why the last parak of Hilchos Tshuva in the Rambam speaks about Avas Hashem and not exactly about Tshuva. When you have Avas Hashem, the Rambam is telling us, nothing can stand in your way. And that's why Shabbos, we had a question, it says that by Shabbos, if you're Hashomer, Shabbos, if somebody's Hashomer Shabbos, it says that we're moichli, there's a mechila on his averis, even if he's avad avodah zara, kedar enosh. So now with the Nesivos Shalom says, now we can understand why by Shabbos, because what does the Gemara say? What's the Maimah Chazal? Kol hashomer Shabbos kehilchasa. It doesn't just say someone who's shomer Shabbos. A person who's shomer Shabbos kehilchasa means being shomer Shabbos the way you're supposed to spend Shabbos. Being over Hashem and Avos Hashem, not stop if a person sits, he ties himself up and goes to sleep and doesn't do anything the whole Shabbos. Yes, it's wonderful. He's not being Mechal Shabbos. But Kol HaShomer Shabbos Kehilchasa, if you keep Shabbos the way you're supposed to keep Shabbos, by being over Hashem, with Avos Hashem, then Taka, Yezoicha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's moichel you on all the Averas, even if you were over Avodah Zarah, Kedor Enosh. The Pasuk in this week's Parsha says, but when the Yidden will go to Milchama, v'hoya ki karavchem el Milchama v'nigash hakoyin, and it says the koyin will come and say Shema Yisrael, Shema Yisrael atem yotzim, you're going today out to Milchama. So Rashi brings down over here the Gemara in Soita Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, and the Gemara says, what does it mean Shema Yisrael? That even if you only have the mitzvah, even if the only mitzvah you be Mekayim, you only have mitzvahs Kriya Shema, that will be an advocate for you. That will save you. That will give you Hatzlacha. That will put Hashem on your side. So we see from here, what is Shema all about? The mitzvah of Kriya Shema is about the Ahavtas Hashem Alekecha. The mitzvah of Kriya Shema is about Avas Hashem. So we see a raya from this week's Parsha also. Shema Yisrael, from that Rashi, from the Gemara in Saita, it's telling us the highest Madrega is talking about Avas Hashem. Zokta Nesivos Shalom, I just want to end off with a beautiful thing on this pasuk also. Nesivos Shalom says, when the pasuk says, "V'haya kekaravchem al milchama," so we just said, when you come to milchama, Shema Yisrael, you need Avos Hashem. The Nesivos Shalom says that this kekaravchem el ha-milchama is referring also to the Yom Hadin. When you're going to come to Chodesh Elul, and Parshas Shoftim is always laid at the beginning now of Chodesh Elul. When you're going to come to Chodesh Elul, the Karavchem El HaMilchama, what's that referring to? That's referring to the Yom Hadin. And all these lessons that we just learned, what's the biggest eitzah for Yom Hadin? The biggest eitzah to express back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the biggest eitzah to get mechila on your avonos is Avas Hashem. Is the highest level of tshuva is tshuva me'ava. Avas Hashem, v'ahavtas Hashem alikecha. To do tshuva, to show it with the hislavas and everything that you do, how much you love Hashem and what your Avas Hashem is. And a person really has to think about it himself. I was just thinking, this God is not brought down. In the Nesivos Shalom, the beginning of the Parshas talks about, it says, Shoftim v'shoitrim titen l'cha b'chol sharecha. Doesn't use a lashon rabim. Everybody's always ready to put policemen and put judges and put shoftim to guard everybody else. You're always ready. Oh, we want to make sure you don't do averis. You want to make sure you're being policed. You want to make sure for everybody else, you're always ready. So the Torah says, and this is something I'm saying on my own, I'm not sure, but the Torah says, shoftim v'shoitrim, you want to do tshuva, you want to do tshuva me'avas Hashem. It's wonderful to worry about the rest of the world and be about chesed and take care of everybody else. But titan l'cha, first look in the mirror. First look at yourself. Titan l'cha b'chol sharecha. First look at everything that pertains to you before you move on to help out and be everybody else's judge and everyone else's policeman. Shoftim v'shoitrim titan l'cha. Is your Avas Hashem in order? Is your Yiras Hashem in order? Is your Bein Adam L'Makom in order? Is your Bein Adam L'Chavera in order? And this is something to think with approximately 3+ weeks left to Rosh Hashanah. We're starting Chodesh Elul to sort of put us on the track of Avas Hashem, put us on the track of thinking about where we have to be. And this first week, we can take this lesson, hopefully we'll all be on the way to Teshuva.